thirsty ground, springs of water. And then chapter 9, and literally we are reading the entire chapter, verses 1 to 41. I looked up trying to shorten it for us, but there's so much richness to this story, and there are so many little parts to it that I think there's value in hearing the whole story from start to end. A man born blind receives sight. As he, Jesus, walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some were saying, "It is he." And others were saying, No, it's somebody like him." He kept saying, "I am that man." But they kept asking him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' Then I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." The Pharisees investigated the healing. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. He said to them, "He put mud on my eyes. Then I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." The man said, "He is a prophet." The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but we do not know how it is that he now sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, "He is of age. Ask him." So for the second time they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?" Then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Now here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, You were born entirely in sins, and are you trying to teach us?" And they drove him out. Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" And the blind man, no longer blind, answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me so that I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would not have sin. But now that you say, 'We see,' your sin remains." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. It's a challenging passage, and there are so many avenues that we could take to talk about this text and what it means to be blind and what it means to see. And I've been talking about the 7 R's that we can, in ways that we can resist evil and the empire in the world today, the ways that we can resist things that are not from God. And so today we're going to talk about resolution and changing resolutions. Resolution has lots of meanings, but we're going to talk about 3 meanings. The first one that probably comes to all of our minds is New Year's resolutions. Those firm commitments or decisions that we make at the beginning of the year, a commitment or a determination, a firmness, a single-minded purposefulness. We resolve to change something, to help others, to get fit, to find a new job, to quit smoking, to enjoy life, to lose weight, to find love, to save money, to take a trip. We have lots of resolutions that we make in order to improve ourselves. The other meaning of resolution for this is to be resolute, to be strong in your faith, in your commitment, in your dedication. The second meaning is the action of solving a problem, a dispute, or a contentious matter. To find resolution with somebody is to find a way forward in a relationship that was divided, that had conflict, that was really difficult. To find resolution is to find peace. And the third meaning of resolution is the smallest interval measurable by a scientific instrument, usually an optical piece of instrument, a camera or a television. It's the degree of detail visible in a photographic or television image. So we're going to talk about these last 2. When we talk about visible detail, how might Jesus be calling us to change our resolutions in this passage? When we talk about visible detail, this passage says to me, what happens when we get the resolution wrong? When things are fuzzy and we don't see the picture clearly, or when we focus on the wrong things. Surely all of you have seen a picture where the camera focused on something in the foreground instead of what you were taking the picture of that's way back here. Or the camera focused on the background instead of the picture that you wanted to take, which was right in front of you. Sometimes our vision gets blurry and we focus on the wrong thing. That happened several times in this passage. At the very beginning, the disciples asked, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man who was born blind, or his parents that he was born blind?" They're focusing on the wrong thing. Jesus says, neither one of them sinned. Blindness wasn't a result of sin. God is not causing suffering because of your sin. Blindness happened so that the glory of God may be revealed. Not so that the glory of God could be revealed through his healing or through his curing, but so that the glory of God could be seen through this individual who is made in the image of God, even if he can't see. So they focused on the wrong thing. They thought that suffering in the world meant that that was somebody who had sinned. And Jesus says, no, that's not the way that works. And that's not what I'm trying to teach everybody. And the Pharisees get it wrong too. They focus on the wrong thing. And they say, this man can't be from God. He healed on the Sabbath. No man from God would heal on the Sabbath. They focus on the wrong thing. They focus on how to them it is more faithful to worship the right way than it is to heal God's children. It is more important to follow all of the rules and regulations than to see the injustice that is a blind man who is forced to beg in order to survive because his family can't provide for him, because he has no means of making money, because he cannot work in the fields, and he cannot work a trade with his hands because he cannot see. So we have to fix the focus. And the blind man is the one who gets it in the passage. He's the one that answers every argument that's given to them with astonishment. How do you not know that this man is from God? How could somebody who has sinned heal? This man is clearly someone we should be listening to. And then he says, I know one thing. I was blind, but now I see. And so for him, the evidence is clear. Jesus is this person from God, for God. Now there's a difference in curing and healing, and I think it's an important difference to note, because sometimes this passage gets us thinking about ability and disability in ways that aren't always helpful in our culture. And for generations past, even in our biblical times, people look at disability as something that is wrong with them, instead of something that is just different about them. So a few theological fixes need to happen. Jesus healed this man. He didn't cure him medically. And I think there's an important distinction to make, because suffering is not always the result of sin. And we need to be very, very careful about assuming with any certainty what causes someone else's suffering. And because there is a difference between being healed and being cured, this talks about what Jesus' principal task was. His principal task here was the healing of this man, of the restoration of this man into community. He was isolated, he was without resources, he was unable to be a part of the community. So God's healing comes when there is something that separates us from God, or when there is something that separates us from each other. And that is what Jesus was doing when he healed this blind man. And the reason I think that that's important is there are lots of people who suffer from lots of differing abilities. And as a chronic sufferer of asthma, I will never be cured of my illness. I will never not have asthma. Some people do, and that's wonderful. But I have been healed in my own journey to the point that it does not cause me to be isolated from my community. It does not stop me from being active or as involved as I choose to be. If I wanted to join a sport, I could join a sport. I would have to make sure that I take care of myself in that process, but it does not stop me from being involved. Healing can happen in any circumstance, regardless of whether someone is cured of what ails them or not. The healing is between that God and that person, and sometimes it is a healing of spirit. It's important as well to remember that we do not have all the answers, and we do not have to have all the answers. But that does not have to stop us from witnessing to the glory of God. Not one person in that passage talked to the blind man and said, "Oh my gosh, how amazing is this that you can see? What is it like to see the world for the first time? What's your favorite color? What have you seen that is the most beautiful thing that you never expected to look that way? Or did you really expect a frog to look at the way that you see a frog now? What surprised you? Not one person